Hello, I am so excited to bring you something new that is the Women's Health series that I'll be airing here on the podcast over the next couple of weeks. I know this podcast and normally what I coach on is all on nutrition and lifting weights for ladies who want to build muscle and decrease body fat and really look the part and feel the part. But there's so much that goes into that. I know we also talk about blood work and a lot of coaching and systemizing your life, not only on the podcast, but in my program, Create Your Shape, where I work with all of my ladies. However, I want to take this time to expand on all of that and bring in experts from pelvic floor health to astrology and herbs and HRT, infertility, and running $1 million business. So I'm excited to share these conversations I've had with all of these different ladies. They have been so valuable and really discussed through the lens of wanting to be that fit, strong, healthy female who has it all in all aspects of her life. And I know for many of you, that is what we're all after. So let's get into it. Welcome back to the Create Your Shape podcast. Today, I'm very excited because I'm chatting with Kristin Johnson and Maria Collapse to discuss their work, which is amazingly displayed in their book, The Great Menopause Myth. And now, before you guys think, I know you're like, oh, I'm only in my 30s or I'm in my 40s. Like, this doesn't pertain to me. And I know I have a handful of listeners in their 50s and beyond too. But that is exactly how I stumbled upon their work between the ladies that I work with, some crazy things I see on blood work with pellets, which we'll get into, but also hearing more lately, okay, you got to start in your 40s addressing this to have a smooth menopause. So the earlier you can learn and navigate for yourself, the better, which we'll get into. But I was looking for a good reference and I found Kristin and Maria, who on Instagram, they're wise and well. And the way they explain things and the way it's organized, and it aligns so nicely with what we talk about here for ladies who are healthy and lifting weights and getting in protein and all of that good stuff in their holistic view. So I'm really excited to chat with them and just learn more. So first, can I have you all introduce yourself and then we'll get into all of the goods. So Maria, or do you want to go
Yeah,
first?
sure. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Yeah, so I'm Maria and I am a health coach, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, postmenopausal woman, and just teaching about menopause and helping women really truly understand what it is my shared passion with my partner in crime, Kristin.
Her work wife, yeah. So I'm Kristin Johnson. I am a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, board certified in holistic nutrition, health coach, and same with Maria. I think, most people come to their specialty and credentials through solving their own problems sort of thing. And I mean, what's interesting is both of us sought out education and training kind of separately from our own problems, but then our own problems became impossible to ignore sort of thing. And so we then started seeing it in our own client group, right? There suddenly we're attracting people who share our issues. And we were like, there's got to be more to this. And Maria sort of understated her expertise. She's done a ton of training, and I found her because she was teaching a course for practitioners to help with some functional testing around hormones. And then the two of us were like, okay, this is really, really deep for both of us, and let's just make a go of it. And so we literally pitched aside both of our individual practices and join forces for Wise and Well. And, I think it's been important for us as practitioners. There's a lot of burnout in what we do. And midlife ladies, there's just a lot of sort of hysteria and concern and fear around all of this. And it's a lot of energy to sort of talk everyone off the ledge, make them recognize they have agency over this time of life. It just takes knowledge. And so that's, we kind of see ourselves really as educators before anything else.
And that was one of the biggest things I got from the book is that we're not educated, which I find to be the same in nutrition. And that's what I really push for on the nutrition front. But yeah, definitely with menopause and hormones, we're not educated and we have to advocate for ourselves because as we've seen, that won't be the case out there. So can we get into and highlight some of the menopause myths? I I think the two biggest things for me was that, okay, we've got to be educated and there's a lot of misinformation out there, which causes a lot of fear. But can we just highlight some of the main things that we see, even on it looked like from the causes side, the symptom sides, and the solutions, there's like myths and misinformation across the board.
Yeah, a really significant one, and you're going to hear this maybe from women like in their late 50s or 60s or even 70s, and that is that and it's good for women of all ages to know, and it's good that like, oh, I've gotten through, I'm past menopause. Well, yeah, maybe from a chronological perspective you are, but not from a health impacts perspective. And I know for both Kristin and I, that just breaks our hearts when we hear that, because we know that they really don't understand, what's happening. So that's a
Yeah.
big.
Yeah, I mean, today's post that we've got up is really kind of pushing this point, is that there's this myth that if you have symptoms, you address it. Unfortunately, then the solutions that people seek are also problematic, because often for ladies in their 40s, it's going to be the birth control pill. Um, maybe the kind of eat less, move more approach, which we all know is kind of a fool's errand. And then for the 50s and 60s, like Maria said, it's this sort of, well, it's not really a problem. And what we're trying to get home to ladies is that the biggest imperatives about declining hormones, which by the way, you can't out protein, out strength train, out anything. It's going to happen to every single lady who's born with ovaries. They're going to suddenly go to sleep and we're going to have to deal with it. But the biggest thing is that these imperatives are happening under the hood. And so they're not always palpable. And we get really frustrated at so much of the distraction around menobelly, or you're sleepless, or you have anxiety, which are all relevant. And they're all absolutely women's lived experiences that need attention as well. But there are women who probably fit into your demographic that come in metabolically sound. They're not under eating. They're not over exercising. They're addressing their adrenal health. They've really got kind of things dialed in. And so they have this assumption that things are going to go well for them. And it might from a symptom standpoint. But what we try and bring home with today's post on Instagram is that every single woman, the further you get out from this hormonal decline and loss of hormones, the harder it's going to be to ignore that things have changed. And you might be now behind the ball. We can't really reverse certain vascular damage, right? It's there. Now we can manage it. So that I would say is kind of our number one beat the drum myth. But then we can go into like the solutions. Birth control is not hormone.
Yeah, like in other words, we can just manage you with a birth control pill. And, that's going to be something that like women in, say, peri and even like early postmenopause will typically be offered, just because it's super convenient. Women might already, be taking it. And
Or
what they
Mirena, an IUD.
right.
Yeah.
So, just like any type of kind of hormonal birth control. And it's just really, really unfortunate. They cannot stay on it forever. And, when they finally come off, they may have certain impacts to their health, right? Their gut may not be so good, and their hormone receptors are not going to be they're not going to be super healthy. They can be rehabilitated, but again, it's just you're kicking the can down the road. And, we're just such a very much a symptom focused society, not a what does menopause and this transition mean for the global body, my entire body. We really want women to look ahead to 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Like, how do you want to live your life? Right. And you start thinking about that now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's, you kind of hit on the whole, like, there's a whole chapter in the book about female hormones beyond fertility. And you started, Jenny, in saying so many of us aren't educated. And Maria and I would say it goes all the way back to puberty, right? That we are not told what our cycle represents when we're 13, 14, 15 years old. We adopt this kind of socially acceptable mentality of Aunt Flo's coming to visit and I'm going to be a bitch for half my month and blah, 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 blah. And heavy bleeding is normal. And no, you just do these things. If we as ladies, as females, understood that there is this unbelievable, beautiful control of our physiology and biological actions that are going on the moment we get that first menses, all the way through when we finally don't have a menses, we would look at it so differently. We would start to value our hormones instead of trying to like wash our estrogen out with supplements and, shut it down with birth control pills. And so that's, I think, another myth is that ladies think that like, I've just lost my cycle, yay, because now I don't have to worry about pregnancy. Well, newsflash, you probably weren't ovulating even though you were still bleeding for like the last 10 years. So pregnancy wasn't on the table. But in reality, you shouldn't be cheering the very thing that was protecting your brain from dementia, that was protecting your heart from heart disease, that was protecting your bones from losing, mineral density. So that's another big thing is that we want ladies to just forget about being fearful of aging, forget about this midlife looming thing that's coming for you. Just get to know what your hormones are doing for you outside of fertility and menstruation. And that alone will get every woman to wake up and go, well, snap, I don't want to live without them, right? No matter what it might, involve. So that I think is a really important thing. It's just that education piece. Forget about midlife, forget about menopause. Just learn what your hormones are doing.
Yeah, and how much they help you. And when I work with a lot of like type A, high achieving ladies who tend to have more gut, more hormone issues, and when they see, if they get blood work done, they see that their hormones are low and how that feels. I mean, I know I've gone through this. I'm like, oh, this is a little taste of menopause, and this is experiencing how important these hormones are. And I think a lot of people think, oh, this is too complicated. Like I'm not even going to peek my head in there because I don't understand it at all. And I'm just going to let an expert tell me what to do, like a doctor, right? Tell me what to do. And there's such a big gap there that it's not, sure, it can be complicated, but even if you just understand the outline, the framework, the main hormones, right, you're going to do yourself such like a service if you even just know that little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the reality is, and we cover this in part of the book, is like doctors aren't taught about menopause. Newsflash. No one graduates from med school
Or nutrition.
and becomes an OBGYN and gets any training in this. They're taught, puberty, conception, prenatal, postpartum. That's it when it comes to OBGYNs. And there's a huge study that just talked to all these med school students, particularly in the US, and said, what is your number one concern? They're like, I am fully unprepared to handle women in midlife. So leaving it into the hands of the white coat is not something you want to do.
Yeah, I actually wrote down, I think it was myth number 8, which is a doctor who can prescribe HRT is knowledgeable about it and has your whole health in mind. And
That's a myth.
That's
Total myth.
I see it again and again with hormones across the board, but definitely menopause in what I've seen. So it sounds like to kind of highlight some things, the myth is that, if you just kind of, again, summarizing, because there's a lot to this, is that one, the system 100% supports you, is set up to support you, like the medical system's 100% set up to support you through this journey. Another one is that it's a good thing, right? Oh, no more cycle. And that another myth is that it doesn't have an impact on other aspects of your life or health. And that was one of the biggest takeaways reading the book, of seeing, oh, this, I had an idea, right? But then when you list out every single thing it impacts, especially your risk for diseases that goes up, it's like, oh yeah, it changes menopause. It's like, oh, this is just something that happens to, no, this is something that is going to impact the quality of my every single day and my how long I could survive, and so much more, that if I can address this and not have my hormones plummet, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah. Health span is key. I mean, none of us, you shared with us kind of who your demographic and target audience is. I don't think that any one of your, clients and followers, listeners are putting all this effort into their daily lifestyle foundations just to have the bottom fall out around 55, 60 years old, notwithstanding everything that they did prior. And newsflash, it's going to happen. If you don't pay attention to the hormone loss and you don't address the hormone loss, it's going to happen. There's, like I said, there's no amount of exercising, protein consumption, or anything else that's going to avoid the risk of, say, high blood pressure because of low estrogen, right? That's not a just, oh, as long as I keep my insulin low, I can avoid high blood pressure. No, you need estrogen. You need your estrogen. And that's what we're trying to get across to these ladies, because now we have this menopause gold rush. There's a lot of discussion and awareness about it, right? It's not taboo to talk about. But now women are being distracted by pushing against the notion of it. Like, no, it's
I'm
not.
not deficient.
Yeah, I'm
Not
not deficient. Don't call me deficient in anything. It's a pathology that I, reject, sort of thing. And then we have a supplement for that. Well, newsflash, ladies, no amount of maca or ashwagandha is going to lubricate your vagina. And let me tell you that when you lose your sex life with your partner, of whomever that is, it changes your quality of life. And that's just one tiny little thing. So that's why Maria and I are like, you got to understand everything that these hormones were doing, even if you think you've got it all figured out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And along with that, it's almost like, yes, all of these lifestyle and supplement factors can help and do that
In the short term.
that's not gonna stop the inevitable. And
Right.
it sounds like you guys recommend pairing the two together, where if someone is a good fit for HRT, you have to have the lifestyle factors in place as well. And so I think my ladies are interested in that and be like, oh, I do have that. But if we can just reiterate some of the nutritional guidance, because it aligns very much with what I share too. So it'll help me as well if you guys also say in terms of macros and what you suggest for nutrition macros as a general guidance.
Yeah, we always we're huge fans of hormone replacement therapy, but we also make it hopefully very clear that it doesn't work in isolation. And so you have to pair it with healthy lifestyle practices. And in fact, it can even go sideways in an unhealthy body. So that's, it just can't come in and fix everything. It is like, sort of like, if you have this huge jigsaw puzzle and you've got all the pieces dialed in, though you've got everything, but you're missing like 2 or 3 pieces, and your eye goes directly to that. Oh my gosh, that's an incomplete puzzle. I can't, finish it or make it a masterpiece because you're missing these 2 pieces. That's really what that HRT is. It's like, it's just that key critical few pieces in that 1,000, jigsaw puzzle. And it's really important, but the other things are important as well. And what's really interesting is that when you get the HRT on board, one of the things that it does, like Kristin said, before when we were talking about how, like, oh, well, no, if you just, if you keep your insulin low, you're going to be, you think maybe you're going to be able to, kind of ride out some of the cardiometabolic issues. Well, also is that having the estrogen on board helps you to keep the insulin low. So there's that as well. But yeah, the nutrition is very important. As far as like macro stuff, that ain't my jam. So Kristin, you can take over.
Yeah. I mean, as Maria says, as you're getting the point, it's an optimizer. HRT is an optimizer. You got to have all the other pieces put in place. And her analogy was great, because a lot of women just want to skip to those 3 missing pieces, and then they try and stick them together and make a whole picture. It doesn't work. They absolutely require each other. So, the number one thing we'll start with is, ladies, you got to eat. And we're just seeing too much fasting. We're not, you want to intermittent fast, great, do it while you're sleeping. You better wake up and eat breakfast. You'd better eat before you train. You better eat after you train. You've just got to eat enough. So I would say, especially the younger ladies, our 30 and 40-year-old clients, they're under eating and they're buying into the fasting, and it is not serving them well. And it's going to come like a just, blindsiding smack in the face when they wake up at about 45, 50, how things aren't going to go well, because now you're metabolically broken. Now you've got to change your metabolism, probably have to reverse diet, all these sorts of things. So start with just eating, please, ladies. And then for macros, carbohydrates are super controversial right now. You know, we've got a younger podcaster whom we adore, but she's like, eat all the carbs. And we're like, you're so cute. You're 43 and you just don't know yet. So, you know, your carbohydrate tolerance definitely does decline as your estrogen declines. And sadly, adding estrogen into the mix can help you prevent further decline, but it doesn't mean you're going to suddenly have the capacity of your 20s where you're pounding 300 grams of carbs a day. So carbohydrates are super individual. You know, we like to say earn them. You know, if a woman is metabolically broken, insulin resistant, she's going to have a different carb threshold than a lady who's not. So there, you know, we won't get too specific, but we'll say we've got ladies who are going less than 20 grams and we got ladies who are 120, 150 grams. And it's very, very individual. You know, but again, earn them. Protein should not be controversial. You know, we would say go with the 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, not your current. If you got 50 pounds to lose, you don't, you know, add in those extra 50 grams. Ladies will like to say 0.8 to 1.2. Okay, fine, whatever your range is, but hopefully you're strength training and you need amino acids, particularly at a certain threshold in order to stimulate muscle to respond to all that strength training. So just keep it easy and go with 1 gram per pound of body weight. And then fat is, you know, we're not anti-fat at all. I mean, Maria and I kind of love it, to be perfectly frank, but we're not keto. And the reason why we don't love ketogenic approaches is because fat is wildly satiating. And if you're satisfied after eating your brick of, you know, tallow, guess what? You're not going to eat enough protein. And so that's why we think fat's really just sort of this, you know, modulating lever that you need to really focus on the protein, then focus on eating enough total calories. And however you mix that fat carb blend really needs to be individualized for you. We tend to guide ladies at starting at about 60% of their protein grams as fat grams, just as a starting place. Some may have to go up, some may go down, depending on their individual goals and activity. But, you know, again, it really just comes back to eating. I mean, ladies, I get not wanting to track. So we're like, fine, don't track. Track just protein. Just protein. You don't have to weigh and measure every single thing you put in your mouth. But if you don't have a pretty good idea about how much protein you're eating, you're failing yourself. And, you know, Maria will be better at tracking than I will from time to time, but we've both been doing this so long that I know that if I, you know, make a mixed green salad with an entire can of tuna on top of it and a hard-boiled egg, I'm probably banging out 45, 50 grams for breakfast or for lunch, you know, and my breakfasts are always very, very dialed in because it's when I train. So it doesn't have to be lifelong. We get that tracking and marking, you know, your nutrition daily can be triggering for ladies. There are unfortunately people with eating disorders that, you know, it's just not realistic for them to pay that much micromanagement to their nutrition. But you do have to start somewhere and know. And then, you know, if you just repeat what you eat most of the time, I mean, it's not that hard, you know. And I would add one third thing was eat breakfast like a queen, eat lunch like a princess, and eat dinner like a pauper, because we've flipped the script as women and we're starving ourselves all day long. And then we're just trying to fit it in at night. It's not great for your circadian rhythm. It's not great for your sleep. It's not great for your digestion. And now you're kind of behind the ball when you wake up the next day, ready to train. So yeah, eat, know your protein, and, you know, kind of split your meals in such a way that you really favor that first half of the day.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, that's the number one thing I see, especially for ladies who are lifting and their goal, right, when they come to me is they want to look like they lift and they want to feel
Yeah.
like they lift. They're not
Yeah.
eating enough, right? Because we've, again, more myths and misinformation. But I also love how on the same boat, how you say of like carbs are earned. I like that because I think there's always extremes, right? No, don't have carbs,
Yeah.
or eat all the carbs. We're really, it's
Yeah.
individualized, and
Yeah.
yes, like you need baseline, but then they're earned. And ladies who train hard and have a lot of muscle, right? That's gonna go up.
They've got a bigger reservoir. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I loved how you described that because I think a lot of people now like shy away from saying things like that. So I love that. So the other thing that I want to get into is HRT, and you guys have mentioned it. Can we just first describe what is HRT and why is it a great solution for perimenopause?
Well, I mean, it's a great solution for perimenopause and menopause leading into postmenopause, but it's basically replacing the hormones that you're losing. And, we start with estradiol and progesterone, and that's whether or not you have a uterus. And then we add in testosterone and or DHEA if needed.
Yeah.
And not everyone needs those two. And in fact, we can just harken back to one of the myths. And one of the myths is that testosterone will be like just perfectly fine and all you need to kind of manage your HRT or replace your hormones. And that's because there's just a big testosterone craze afoot, for probably the last several years now, in, I think, this country, Canada, I mean, many countries probably, but definitely the United States. And it's because we have a lot of testosterone volume wise as women, but that does not automatically kind of equate to it's important. We're not saying it's unimportant. It's a hormone. We make it, it's important, but it's not our primary hormone as women. So
Yeah. Well, there was a really cool study because the people who are claiming this whole, it's the most abundant sex hormone in the female body. And we're like, okay, do you understand where estradiol comes from? Because it's aromatase it's converted from testosterone. So if we're measuring testosterone, it's not all staying testosterone, ladies.
right.
It's constantly converting for us. And estradiol is what drives our biology. So the problem now is that there's this mentality, well, I can give women high doses of testosterone and it'll help their sex hormones. Well, thank God there was recently a study that said actually doesn't happen that way. We need to make a distinction between endogenously produced hormones from our ovaries and our adrenals versus exogenously provided hormones from hormone replacement therapy. Testosterone in the body made by the ovaries and adrenals does convert to estradiol, and that's what keeps us women. Testosterone given as hormone replacement therapy doesn't convert to estradiol. It just doesn't. There was a huge study looking even in the transgender community where they were giving massive doses of testosterone. It didn't improve, affect, or change their estradiol at all. So that's a piece that we really need to kind of like blow up in the narrative, is that giving testosterone is going to help your other hormones. It doesn't. And the same goes for, we have providers who are a little scared of actual sex hormones. So they'll decide that giving HRT means dosing a woman with pregnenolone. Well, pregnenolone, sure, it's a precursor in the female body, and the body determines how it changes into different hormones based on pathways. But providing exogenous pregnenolone does not mean it's going to convert into your sex hormones the way it does if we produced it. So that's a huge, huge distinction. And we're starting to see a little bit of discussion around it, but it's still, being pushed back on because testosterone's like jet fuel. Who doesn't feel good being jacked on jet fuel, right? And so these 30 and 40-year-olds, some things, they're usually coming in needing testosterone because they've throttled their adrenals. Well, that's a lifestyle issue, ladies, and you need to fix that. Jacking yourself on testosterone is not going to fix it. And you can't stay on that testosterone at those levels forever. If you do, you will have a permanent lowering of your voice box. You will have an enlargement of your clitoris to a small penis that needs to be surgically adjusted.
Possibly hair loss or hair growth in places that you don't want it.
Yeah.
This is Jenny, we bring this up because like for the 35 to 45-year-olds, like testosterone is the hot ticket. And again,
shiny object.
It's you have a testosterone source from the adrenals and you have one from the ovaries, right? And so if you are a 40-year-old woman who has no libido or you want to build muscle and you're thinking like testosterone is your ticket, like you need to look at your lifestyle. Why? Because lifestyle impacts adrenal health. And, the adrenals don't give up or fatigue, but the body can downregulate.
Well, and it does as a protective mechanism, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we know that if the body is under stress, whatever that stress is, physiologic, emotional, whatever, it's going to say, oh, the ability to procreate and have these sex hormones needs to be paused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not important.
So eat enough and sleep are two things that I'm hearing.
Yep.
And
don't overtrain. Please don't
overtrain.
overtrain.
Yep.
We get it that the the female body changes as we age. There is no stopping that train. I don't care what you hear. If you see a 57 or 63-year-old trainer who's got her six-pack abs and everything else, okay, we really don't know the state of her health. And Maria and I have seen plenty, and they might have an insulin of 19, which is massively a problem. But there's also genetics usually helping a lot of these women, and we just have to accept that. The vast majority of us are not going to age with a 30-year-old body. It's just not going to happen. And the reality is, it's also not healthy for us to do so. When they look at all-cause mortality, having 5 to 10 pounds more on your frame is essential for surviving health challenges and accidents and injuries and infections as we age. So ladies need to kind of accept it's going to change. You can mitigate the change. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just eat all the things and, forget all your training. But you have to stop making the ideal and the goal and the reason why you're training whatever your memory is of your 30-year-old body in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love it. And so going back to the HRT, and a lot of people are just going straight to testosterone, which it sounds like if that is the route you take, going estrogen first and then progesterone.
Or together. A lot of women are going to do progesterone first or estrogen and progesterone together.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I see a lot of ladies where they see their blood work and they're on pellets. And I mean, I do it at round. So I saw one round with 4 ladies who were on pellets, all with testosterone in the 400s.
Mm-hmm.
That's not even the highest we've seen it.
Oh, really?
No.
No, we've seen 1,000. Yes.
I was shocked. I was like, what is going on? And then, of course, there were other issues, whether it's like high insulin and then cholesterol. And then they're like, I feel good, but then I don't feel good. And then I feel good and I don't feel good.
Yep.
And so what would you share with those people who are on pellets who do have this super high testosterone? What would you say to them?
Yeah, they need to stop.
Stop.
I mean, there's a great study out of, Maria, I think it's USC that looks at, so we refer to hormone levels as what should be physiologic, meaning those of a younger, healthy woman. Okay. Newsflash, we never had 400 of testosterone ever in our lives, ever. So the study said supra physiologic levels, meaning those that are, crazy high of our normal youth levels, are actually significantly at risk for cardiovascular disease. And there's huge changes, and you're not going to feel it, ladies. You're not going to feel the endothelial lining of your arteries starting to have an immune challenge and thicken and do all these things. And when you finally learn of it, it's kind of too late. It's either going to be stroke, heart attack, or you're having plaque in your heart. And that piece, I don't care how good you feel, it's almost becoming like an addiction issue for a lot of these ladies.
I was just going to say, just going on how you feel. Sure, we all want to feel good, but that is not the sum total of what we're looking for when it comes to HRT. It's just not, because you feel good until you don't.
Yeah.
Right. And we make our ladies do an intentions sheet when they work with us. And we say, wherever you're coming from, you need a growth mindset, right? Change. You have to change to change. You didn't come pay 2 ladies off the internet to, coach you on these things if you weren't looking to change something. But then B, it needs to be, not tied to a scale, not tied to a gene size, not tied to these things, because you might achieve that scale, but you still can't bend over and pick up your grandchild. So you can't, tackle Camelback Mountain on your trip that you're going to take to Arizona, which Maria and I are going to be doing in a couple of weeks. So that piece of it, ladies need to kind of step back and kind of shove the ego aside in terms of the aesthetics and ask themselves, how do I want to age? And I think the vast majority of us women would say, I don't want to be a burden to my family and loved ones. I want to be vital and active and thrive. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to experience life. Guess what? None of that has in common. There's not a scale weight attached to it. Right? So when these ladies are so jacked in the testosterone and they feel great, that has 0 relevance to your health. And if health is your ultimate objective, you're going to need to wean off those damn pellets, and you're going to need to address kind of the damage that they probably did. And then you're going to need to get yourself sorted with real good HRT.
And so transitioning to that, what does that look like in comparison if it's not pellets? And how like what would be the steps towards that, whether you're transitioning from pellets or you're just now interested in HRT and want to learn more?
So, I mean, it really depends on the individual woman, her age, what her goals are. But like we said, it starts with, for younger women, it can start with progesterone only. And then
And when you say younger,
eventually,
what age frame
Early
would
40s.
so, you know, it's so variable, but, you know, we'll just say 40, right?
Okay.
Just to put something on it. But again, if you're 40 and you're, or, you know, you're menopausal at 40, then you need estrogen and progesterone, right? So, but, you know, when women start to see maybe like heavy periods or, you know, mood issues or sleep issues, and maybe some periods changing, you know, progesterone might be just fine for months, a year, 2 years. Again, super variable, but this is what, like, learning what these signs and symptoms are and understanding the changes gets you to pay attention. And, you know, you're working with a qualified practitioner, you'll know when to bring the rest of the hormones in. But so progesterone can start, some women start with both estradiol and progesterone, and then, you know, it could be anywhere from 6 months to 12 months after that, women may want to add DHEA or testosterone. So that's pretty much how it looks. And there are various forms, and, you know, that they can read our book.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to highlight what Maria was just saying there, because that's one of the big myths, is that all HRT is the same. And, you know, there is a vast spectrum of what constitutes HRT, you know, and it can start back at the whole IUD birth control, which we fully reject, shouldn't even be on the spectrum, but sadly it is because that's standard of care. And then all the way to, you know, truly mimicking a woman's cycle, using progesterone in a cyclic manner, having rhythmic amplitude, meaning peaks to their estrogen and progesterone doses at different days on the month, or there's static every single day, same dose, low dose. There's creams, there's injections, there's pills. There's so many ways to skin a cat when it comes to HRT. And this is why yet another myth is, just because someone can give you HRT doesn't mean they know what they're doing. And you need to know what you're doing. You can't go into a provider and say, okay, my hormones are tanked, I'm 47, you know, I haven't had a cycle in 4 months, I know I'm in late peri, etc. This is what I want, because all you're going to get is whatever they know how to do. And their toolbox might not be that deep, and their toolbox may not be tailored for you, and they're going to be biased to their toolbox. So you have to go in there and say, this is what I want. And it might mean you're going to have to do a little research on the provider before you even go and ask for HRT. And so starting with understanding every form, you know, and method of dosing, route of administration, and no, you don't need to be a doctor to understand that stuff. And then finding a provider who has the same goals for you. If their goal is just to shut you up and stop your hot flash, that's going to be a very different looking HRT than if your goal is to avoid osteoporosis and heart disease. Two totally different HRTs. But, you know, too many ladies, especially the younger ones, they think, I don't need to know this. I'm young. I'm not old. You know, they're not going to recognize that it's not a bottle of Advil off the, you know, counter that you just pick up and pop in your mouth. So there's a lot to it.
Yeah. And I think that those mostly who are listening want the vitality, right? So this is good that we're speaking from that angle. I'll just ask about one feedback that I hear. And so I'm curious y'all's response on this, is the question of like, do I have to do this forever? Right. And then that combined with, you know, the fear of like, who's profiting off of this? Because I think that is more of a concern, as you guys have mentioned. Like, people will throw anything out at the symptom and knowing what's actually helpful. So what would you guys say to both of those?
You do hormones for as long as you want to be healthy and maintain your quality of life. I mean, it's just, it just is what it is. You know, we can all kind of just cry and complain about like getting older and having to do these things, or you can just see it for what it is and just embrace it and kind of like shift your mindset. Not like I have to do this, but I get to do this.
Yeah.
You know, I've lived this life and I want to keep living a good life and I have to do it. And as far as who's profiting, I mean, it's just like, okay, so it's like, is that the worst thing in the world that God forbid someone should profit?
Well, and there's pharmaceutical capture around the globe. There is absolutely no
Exactly.
denying that. But
Yeah.
Maria's point is, okay, so maybe you like, oh, I don't want to do this HRT forever. Well, what's the average number of prescriptions that your 72-year-old's on? It's like 15 prescriptions. Who's profiting then, right? Big
Yep.
pharma. And by the way, that's a sick care model. That's not a healthcare model. And we would argue that HRT is part of a healthcare model. And, you know, unfortunately, due to the pharmaceutical capture, a lot of physicians are incentivized or at least only educated on commercial products that are available as HRT forms, but not all commercial products are a good fit for every woman. And so that's where individualized compounded medicine should be considered by just about every woman looking at HRT. There's nothing scary about it. Any doctor who's saying that compounded is, bad or bioidentical just means compounded and it's a ploy to get you to, reject big pharma. No, that's not it. Bioidentical means we're mimicking molecular structure that matches the body's produced hormones. Compounded means it can be tailored for you. And, just now in the US, we just got rid of, food dyes. Well, guess what? Some of the major progesterone capsules are made with those darn dyes. So if you were a woman who had a need or a desire to get away from them, compounded medicine's your way to go. So we're not huge anti-commercial HRT. You just have to know its limits and you have to know what other, things may come along with it.
Yeah, it sounds like it all comes back to going back to education, knowing, having
It
information
does.
and advocating for yourself, which the book you guys shared is a great first step to do that. So can we talk about where can people find the book? Where can they, I actually listened to it, so you can listen to it, you can read it. Where can people find the book? And then if they want to learn more and work with you guys, how can they do that?
Sure. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, I guess Audible, right?
Yeah, there's a
Oh,
few
the Great
international sites
Menopause Myth too, just the
The Great Menopause
right
yeah.
Myth.
there. Great Menopause Myth. Yeah, it's available. It's going to be coming out in French and Spanish, right, Maria, in
Yeah.
Cool.
2025 and 2026. It's available in all English speaking. In fact, one of my best friends in Boston just sent me a photo. She was at her local Barnes and Noble and she's like, look what I did. And she had turned our book around and put it like front and center on the bookcase. So you can find it in bricks and mortar stores and you can find it in independent booksellers and you can find it on Amazon and the online stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. And then the other thing is like when I see these labs, right? And I'm like, okay, I know you shouldn't be doing that, but I don't know where to direct you to.
Yeah.
So you guys might be a great resource for that. Do you work with ladies all over? And then if so, how could they work with you?
Yeah, we do. We work with women all over the world. They can just reach out to us via our website, Wise and Well. They can contact us on Instagram. We're Wise and Well there. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. I know this could be probably a 10-hour podcast, but we'll start there and then everyone can read the book to get everything else. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time and everyone else. We'll see you next week on the Create Your Shape podcast.
Thank you,
you.
Jenny.